The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this Danielcode webinar. And thank you, Sim, up in Kuala Lumpur. I hope you and Sim are very, very well. Sim is doing a Danielcode tutorial at the moment, so he's going to be a sensational trader. William in South California, well, welcome to you. A new voice, a new face, and Dean, of course, who's I'm going to be talking about you for a while, Dean, up in Canada. Glad you can all hear me all right. Okay, so let's move on, folks. Here's Hank down in the Hunter Valley. Hello, mate. How are you? Okay, great to have you with us. Let's see who's here today. All the regulars, I guess, and some new ones as well, which is even better. Albert, he's a tutorial guy. Great to have you with us. Cameron, he's down in Melbourne. Cameron, I hope your business is back working now for your sake and ours. We need to use it, don't we? And good luck with it all. Carol, welcome, particularly. Always extend a special welcome to women. We don't have many of them, and I don't know why. My guess is that certainly the women I know like money as much as the men do. So if you want to make some money, learn the Danielcode, and away you go. Christopher, Joel, good to have you with us from Vero Beach. I'm going to be talking to you as well about that email you sent me. As we go, Christopher, David, Dean, of course, George, good to have you. Graham over in New Zealand. Greg, he's a money manager. Great to have you with us, mate. Hank, of course, is down in the Hunter Valley of New South Wales. And he's the grandfather of the year. His son, who's also a Danielcode member, has had a baby, which is great. Jayath, Jay Nath, am I saying that right? Jayanth, great to have you with us. Jen, of course. Lovely to have you with us again. Joel in Vero Beach. Mark, who's the tutorial guy, is going to be a very, very good trader, but he's been a bit busy. He keeps getting offered new jobs. He was going to retire and be a trader, but he keeps, excuse me, he keeps getting new jobs, which distract him. But anyway, get the money wherever you can, mate. Murph, of course, a great stalwart. He's a tutorial guy. Great to have you with us. Milton, you too. Peter, the short-term guy, and the other Peter, good to have you as well, particularly. Phil, good to have you. Rob over in New Zealand, he's a real guru. Great mate of mine. I haven't seen each other for a long time, Rob, but I certainly enjoyed the little time we've had together. Scott, he's doing a tutorial, and he's in the middle of doing his paper trading, Scott, so thanks, Rob. I'm okay, mate. I'm always okay. I'm immune to most things, as you know. And Scotty, you're doing a tutorial. It's about time I got some figures from you from your paper trading. We're due to have a meeting as soon as it suits you, my friend. Let me know. Sean, of course. Trevor, good to have you with us. Lots of others here. Vincent, of course, he's a tutorial guy in New York. He's just in the middle of doing his tutorial now, so great to have you with us. And William, of course, you as well. Okay, lots to talk about today, folks, and boy, it's a pleasure having you with us. The world is just becoming more and more interesting every day. The Chinese have a saying, it's about the only one of the few useful things from them, may you live in interesting times, and we certainly do. So let's move on and have a look at this. Of course, markets are rational, orderly, and sometimes predictable, as you know if you follow the Danielcode. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the NASDAQ. Equities are diverging a lot, and I just want to let you know why the NASDAQ is outperforming all of the others. That's one topic today. The US presidential election, I've called it the Great Switch. We're going to talk about that. And, of course, that's important to traders. And it's also, you might say, why some bloke from Australia having an opinion on what's happening in the States? But Australia is very much affected by China and its relationships, particularly with the US, because Australia is the longest-serving ally of the States. We've been in every war that they've fought. We've been there with them, supporting them, as we still do, and we're also involved in what they euphemistically call navigational exercises in the South China Sea. Used to be called the Yellow Sea, and I've talked to you at length about that with the 9-dash line and China developing these islands, which are really, some of them were not much more than coral reefs, but they've turned them into islands, and then they've armed them. They have, most of them have jet-capable airports. They've got missiles on them, all sorts of nasty things. That all happened during the Obama presidency. So I'm going to talk to you about that. We're going to tell you a bit about the Danielcode tutorial starting in September. If you can start a Danielcode tutorial in September, I'm now willing to give you some terms on that if it'll help you. It's a lot of money. And a lot of people, it's a bit too much of a bite first off, so we're giving you some terms on that if that will help. We're going to update the fourth seal forecast, where we are now, and we're going to talk about that. It is an absolutely extraordinary feat by Frank DB, who's now our fourth seal guru, a student of mine. Done the Danielcode tutorial. I'm going to talk a bit more about that. Joel at Vero Beach sent me an email asking about the Aussie lockdown. So, it feels like the Nazis. What can you tell me about it? Well, the answer is I can tell you everything. And we're going to wrap up with success, which is never wrong for long. And there we are. Let's move on. So, where's my little cursor down here? Goodness me. Here it is. Okay, so the NASDAQ, as you would know, folks, is outperforming the indices massively. The numbers that it's been generating are really quite extraordinary. And what you need to know is that the NASDAQ, like most of the indices, is a capital-weighted index. In other words, the stock value, the value of each component stock, determines how much weight they have in that index. So the tech heavy, the real gargantuans, the Microsoft, Google, Amazon, the FANGs plus the other, they just dominate that index, and they are so heavily weighted in that index that they're virtually running that index, and they're also affecting the S&P in the same way. In fact, Zero Hedge came out the first to call the S&P 500, now called the S&P 5, because these five big tech markets are just dominating that market as well. But it's most noticeable in the NASDAQ. And markets have obviously seized on the idea that COVID favors the disruptors, the new businesses. It is biased against, or at least people are aware of, the damage that COVID's done. And the thing to bear in mind, I think, is that it's more than what the COVID has done. It's what the government done, the various governments, to try and compensate people and businesses. And the amount of money that's been involved is extraordinary. It's just so big your mind can't get around it. Mine can't anyway. But it's past billions now. It's trillions, and sometime or other that's got to be dealt with. I don't know. Does it get repaid? Does it ever get repaid? Low inflation, it's not going to work its way out. It is not going to disappear with inflation, because inflation's negligible. The various feds all around the world, and they're all doing the same thing, are just moving heaven and earth to stop any deflation getting into the economy. So that's a big deal with the NASDAQ, but you need to be aware of that. It's not representative. You take out those five majors, the gargantuan, the super big stocks, it's not representative of what's happening in the rest of the market, and there's a fair bit of divergence with the other equities in that space. Russell in particular has been much weaker than you. If you're only looking at the NASDAQ, you've got a partial view of the market. You should also look at the other indices and think about them. I said I was going to talk about Dean, who's with us today. Dean, great to have you, and thank you for the email you sent me, I think maybe yesterday. And you should read this, folks. Dean's a very interesting character, and I know he won't mind me sharing this with you. He's an American, he's a Canadian, actually, and you can see he says, I'm amazed at the DC. You know, I've been trading silver, blah, blah, blah. He talks about the symbols there. He talks about where the S&P's got to, and he has been trading the grains. But the interesting thing about Dean is he's has been, before he came to me, he was a massive trader, and he had the rare distinction that he made $1 million basically trading the S&P. Very aggressive, lots of doubling up, but he genuinely made $1 million trading the S&P. So why should he come to me, you ask? Well, the answer is, and the sad part of that great story is he then lost the $1 million and a bit more as well. And why did that happen? The market changed, and the vast majority of programs and systems and what the markets talk about are optimized for various particular patterns. And once the market changes, the program falls to pieces. Now, that doesn't happen in the Danielcode. Danielcode is just as good in all markets, and in fact, I mean, it's so perfectly accurate in bear markets as well that it's just a massive tool. But I wanted to show you this in particular because Dean is saying that, and he did the Danielcode tutorial some times ago. He's had a few issues with his head, which you can understand after his history of trading. But he's been getting it together. He's been talking to me periodically, sending me emails with any questions he has on his trading. And that's one of the things that happens with a Danielcode tutorial. I don't just give you X number of classes and that's it. My commitment, if you do a Danielcode tutorial, is that I'm here for you as long as you need me. And a lot of the people who've done Danielcode tutorials years and years ago will still send me an email saying, I'm in a big position. Any suggestions? What sort of stop should I use at this stage? Just refresh my memory. These people the good ones stay with me forever, which is great because I love that. But this is a super piece of trading. He's saying that he's got his account up 90%, lastly, he says, my favourite, the grains have been amazing as well. Good movement and signals in corn, beans and wheat. I'm long all three. August, and corn had a big day up today. I'm long all three. August has been a great month so far. I'll be close to double of my account for the month. In other words, he's at 90% increase for 1 month, August. Now, admittedly, not every month is going to have that sort of volatility, but where you make the big money is where markets have volatility, and there are always some markets showing volatility. And Dean refers to that. He said, it's just a matter of following the signals and putting in the orders. The larger my account gets, the easier it seems to be as my confidence grows, and I can diversify into more trade items. And that's the key, making sure I talked at the last tutorial about the success rule and avoiding slow or sleepy markets. And if you can get some markets that are showing volatility and you know how to trade the Danielcode, the amount of money you can make is just absolutely sensational. So, Dean, congratulations to you, mate, whether you get your 100% or not this week and the few days we have available. That's a fantastic piece of trading, my friend. And I'm really happy to hear it. I'm really happy, Dean, that you took the time to share that with us because we don't get a whole lot of that. Unfortunately, this is a business that doesn't really sell itself. The vast majority of my clients say, wow, that's fantastic, that's amazing, I've never seen anything like it, you've changed my life, but shh, don't tell anyone. We don't want anyone else to know. And of course, that's not the situation. The markets are going to be there forever. They're going to go on forever. And what all or any of the Danielcode traders could do, we're just, a pimple on the head of a whale, if you like. But anyway, if you'd like to do a Danielcode tutorial, I've got capacity at the moment, and I'm offering a one-on-one special deal for September. If you can start your Danielcode tutorial in September, I'm happy to carry terms on the fee, which, as I said, it's expensive at $7,500. But if you can comfortable with $4,000 down and the balance in 90 days, I've extended that to just one or two people so far. But I'm happy to extend that offer to you if you can start your Danielcode tutorial in September. So see what you can do. You'll never look back. This picture of the whale is not Photoshopped. That's a real photo. And what you're looking at is the Gold Coast, surfers paradise at the Gold Coast in southern Queensland, where I live. And you can see the towers all along the beachfront, and you can see the hill behind it, the Hinterland hill. And I live just a bit up from the base of that hill. So as you can see, it's a pretty special place to live. It's the capital, the tourist capital of Australia. It's, if you like, it's the Miami of Australia without the bad features. But it's all right on the Pacific Ocean. It's magnificent. The whales migrate past it twice a year, and you can go out in the boats and see these whales dancing and showing off, and whatever reason they've got for putting on amazing displays. So that's that. If you're interested in the Danielcode tutorial, I put a link to it there, and that link takes you to the tutorial document that we did in September 2018. Time goes quickly when you're having fun, doesn't it? But that's the first tutorial we had in Australia, and I haven't been able to get overseas to do another tutorial since then, and I still can't. We're all in lockdown in this country. It's an amazing thing what happens there. It's a lovely, lovely place to live. If you ever get the chance to come to Australia, do come and visit me at the Gold Coast. It really is paradise, particularly if you're like me and you don't like cold weather much. I was playing rugby until I was 30 and falling off polo ponies until I was 40. So I've got a whole lot of broken bones. And the cold weather just doesn't like me at all. The ache gets bad. And the Gold Coast here, you don't have cold weather. In the middle of winter, you might have 4 or 5, maybe 8 days at most where you'd wear a light jumper, a light sweater. And the rest of the time, it's just beautiful. Most of the year, the vast majority of the year is short sleeve shirts. Boy, it's great. Those of you who came to that tutorial, I know a lot of you did. Thank you, and I enjoyed your company so much. Mick D was there, and some other people, and it was great. I loved it. Hope to do it again as soon as I possibly can, both here and in the States. But let's move on in the meantime. So this is what you get in the tutorial. It teaches you trading time and trading price. And you learn everything from the absolute basics all the way up to forecasting future price action. And as the famous saying goes, forecasting is very difficult, particularly of the future. But our Full Steel forecasting has just had an amazing record for those of you who followed us. And if you haven't, I'm going to refresh that a little bit along the way. And what I say there is, if you're new to futures and forex trading, I'll teach you how. If you're already an experienced trader, I will make you better. Okay, Rob, is that tutorial PDF on your website? It won't open on my browser. Control-click, it will open on your browser. Rob, it is on our website, but it's below the current stuff, so you can't actually read it at the moment. Gig. It's great, isn't it? Happiness. So just load it onto chat. Okay, just stand by a moment. I'll see if I can do that. There it was. So that's the one I want. Now, as you know, guys, that didn't work. I'm very technically challenged. I'll have to get out of this to make it work. Stand by a moment, would you? And I'll give you this. All right, see if I can get this to copy. Looks like I can't. Control click to follow link. What I actually want is I want to copy that link. Here it is. Let's see, and we can hopefully put this in. Wow, the system works. The system works, guys. There it is. So, well, I don't think it's come up anyway. I've copied it. Guys, I'll get Terry to post this. I'll post it in news for you. Otherwise, I'll get distracted. So let's get back to where we were. So there was our whale jumping. I'll get this posted at the website after this is over, guys. And by the way, I should, you're Luddite. You're quite right, mate. I am a Luddite. And I was talking to the bank yesterday, the ANZ Bank, and they want me to download an app for the foreign exchange accounts I have with them. And eventually I got something like that. I said to her, dear, I've been an ANZ Bank client for 50 years. I don't want to have an app on my mobile phone. Firstly, I don't know what an app is. Secondly, effectively, I don't have a mobile phone. Now, that's not quite true. I got a mobile phone for Christmas. My children gave me a mobile phone and said, you know, Dad, you've got to get with it. You can't sort of ignore what's happening in the rest of the world. And of course, I can. The things that I'm interested in have nothing to do with social media. But getting an app. What's an app? I don't know what an app is, and I don't know how to work my mobile phone. Goodness, I can't even copy a link from a PowerPoint document into my browser. We'll get it up right at the top of the Danielcode news at the website almost as soon as this is over. For those of you who've been waiting on success, we had some technical issues this morning, and the success signals were delayed. And they were delayed so much that it was getting close to starting the tutorial. So I put a post up. We put up the daily signals, and I put a post up saying, forgive me, the success signals will come after this tutorial is finished. Okay, so that's what you can expect at the Danielcode. And one of the interesting things about it, Danielcode's a complete program. The signals are like a light switch. They're either on or they're off. There's no in between. Every day you get a new signal. The signal may not be elected. In other words, once we create a signal, they're all conditional orders until the market gets to the number which we post for you at the website. And a lot of them don't get elected. But you know, the whole point of how it works is that on the last complete bar on the daily chart, if you know what you're doing, that actually tells you what the optimum signals you should place for tomorrow are. And it literally is a light switch solution. It's on or it's off. And once you understand that, I was speaking to Keith yesterday in Arizona. And I was explaining to him that, you know, if you simply follow the program, you don't have to think about what the market's going to do. That's the biggest bugbear of traders. What was this market going to do? Well, the reality is you don't know what the market's going to do. I don't know what the market's going to do. Only God knows what the market's going to do. And for us, mere humans, we only see our life as a river, but we only see it backwards up till today. We know what's happened before. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. And the Danielcode is based on the concept that The last completed bar on a daily chart will tell you the most optimum signals for you to place that will get you in the trade, and if appropriate, will keep you in the trade. So it fixes that headspace for you, which causes people so much trouble, so much difficulties. And people saying, God, I agonize about some of these trades. Have I got the trend right? Have I got this right? I don't know how I'm uncertain, and uncertainty is a real killer, and it's not a great thing to have happening to you in the trading space. What's this? Hang on a second. I can't avoid this. David said the link worked for him. Control, click, it should work for you. I'll post it anyway. And Rob says you're lucky as you'll not get hacked by the Russians like New Zealand Stock Exchange for the last 4 days. Is that right? I hadn't heard that, Rob. I used to read the New Zealand Herald all the time, even when I left New Zealand, but I've given up reading it lately, and I'm fascinated to hear that they could get through, whoever the hackers were, could get through the stock exchange protocols. Yeah, good stuff. Okay, so if we can fix the headspace so you never have to worry about what the market's going to do, because the Danielcode will give you the most optimum signals based on the last completed bar. That'll change your life. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about New Zealand closed for 4 days, and today, New Zealand Stock Exchange. Wow. Just as well they don't have a futures market, mate. Well, they did have. They sent it over to Australia for no money. Wasn't very effective. Excuse me. Coffee's exceptionally good today. In fact, coffee's exceptionally good every day. So we need to talk about the US presidential election. And you might ask, as I averted to earlier, what is an Australian slash honorary Kiwi bloke doing commenting on what's happening in the States? Well, the reality is that what happens in the States affects us greatly, and particularly from a trade and security point of view. China is Australia's largest trading partner, and they're very touchy about what Australia does, and because Australia is so closely aligned with the US, we've got into, either with the US or on our own initiative, all sorts of things that they didn't approve of. And the first was that Australia was the first to ask the World Health Organization to have a serious inquiry into China's handling of the COVID incident. Now, China took great offense for that, and started making some nasty noises, and what they did is they started to cut off some of our trade, and then in the process that started with beef. They did delisted as an approved supplier 4 of our biggest beef abattoirs. Since then, Australia, you won't know, but Australia has for many years been following the idea of freedom of navigation. That's an expression that refers to warships of the United States and Australia cruising through the South China Sea and going within the claimed limits of the territorial limits of these various artificial islands that China has created. And Australia's been doing that for a long time and is supporting the US who they do that as well. So what that's all risen to is that they've cut down a lot of our beef exports. They've said that barley, of all things, they've come up with a totally phony dumping case. Dumping is where it's claimed that a producing country is selling the goods on their market for less than their true value, cost of production, and that means that trade is stopped on that until or at least reduced heavily until that particular argument is resolved. So they've cut off Australia's barley trade. They've the beef, as I told you about, and the latest thing is the wine trade. Australia sells a lot of wine to China, and they've now put a ban on Australian wines, saying that they're dumping. Absolutely ridiculous. But Australia's in this China argument up to its knees. So what happens with the US presidential election is very, very important to us. It's fair comment to say that all of this rebuilding and arming of these islands, the Paracels and the Sprightleys in the West China Sea, was done under Obama's watch. Democrats don't seem to get excited about China, and they should, because they're the big bogeyman. And Hillary Clinton's the only person left in the world who still thinks that Russia is America's bogeyman. It's not, but China most certainly is, and not only China. And we're now finding out that just a whole lot of the academics have infiltrated Australian universities. We've been aware of that for a while, but we're now getting some proof of it because it's been looked at seriously. And the same thing has happened in the States. So why is the election, presidential election, matter? Well, because main markets, Western markets, the ones we're interested in, are driven by what the US equities do. And Trump, he's a great booster. Whatever else you may think of him, he's a great salesman. That's his forte, and he's very, very good at it. And I said yesterday, it seems to me a bit unfair to criticize Trump for his personal failings, if they are failings, but he's constantly criticised by the left for his character, for they just don't like him. Anything will do. Call him Orange Man on. That started before the last election even. But Trump is not a career politician. Most of these guys have been on the public teat for their whole lives. I don't know that Joe Biden's ever held a real job. And you can say that about a whole lot of politicians, not only in America, but elsewhere as well. Same here in Australia, that they start off with trade union jobs or as advisors to sitting parliamentarians. In other words, they're on the government teat. They're getting paid by you and me. And they don't have any real understanding, because they don't want to have an understanding of business, and they're anti-big business. Now, you can argue that the other parties are too pro-big business, but there's balances. But you just don't see Biden as able to deal with China, and it hasn't been on the radar of the Democratic Party. They've let all this happen, all this stuff in the 9-. That happened in the years during Obama's presidency, and they didn't care about it. So what's happening with this election is that Trump's a great booster. He's obviously very, very good for the stock markets. I'm going to show you a chart of that in a moment. And Biden became the Democrats' nominee through an accident of history. And those of you who follow politics at all, you'll recall that in the Democratic primaries, the early states, the states that held their primaries early, Biden couldn't get hot. He couldn't get off the floor. He was running third and fourth in all of those early primaries. And the big, the Democratic primaries, these are people who are basically lifelong Democrats doing this voting. But they wouldn't support Biden. They were supporting Bernie and Elizabeth Warren and Mayor Pete. And incidentally, one of the ones they weren't supporting is Kamala, who's now been chosen as the Democratic Party's vice presidential candidate for the upcoming elections. And you've got to scratch your head and say, why? She was down in the 2 and 3% vote in all of those big early primaries. She couldn't get any traction at all. So she obviously hasn't been chosen because they think she can bring a lot of votes. But you've got to look at that in sectors. What it really means is that Biden doesn't get the white vote. And it all turned when the primaries got down to South Carolina and North Carolina, that the black vote was so overwhelmingly for Obama, for Biden, who was Obama's vice president, that it became equally apparent that while Biden wasn't getting the white vote, no one else was getting the black vote. He was getting 70, 80% and more of those states that have a large coloured population. And in that you saw the hand of Obama. When that became clear, Obama, who'd scrupulously stayed out of the primaries situation, didn't endorse Biden early at all. All of a sudden, Biden's talking to Warren and talking to Mayor Pete and talking to Bernie. And we at least know the conversation he had with Mayor Pete was, you're not going to win this. You can't get the black vote at this stage. You're never going to be in a better position to negotiate what you want to do in the future with Biden and the Democratic Party as a whole. You should pull out now, and they did. All of them, bang, bang, bang. All of the stars just disappeared and left Biden there on his own, and for one reason. Biden brings in the black vote. Well, that's the idea. Historically, the black vote has been vitally important to Democrats. But one thing to think about is that this is Trump and the S&P. I just referred to him being a great booster. Have a look at this. This is from when Trump won the election. And as for this rebound from the COVID pullback, well, it was a mini crash, wasn't it? A flash crash, pretty well, less than a month. I mean, it's extraordinary stuff. And Trump's been very, very good for all financial markets. But in here, China is the real bogeyman, as I've been telling you. It's not Russia. Hillary Clinton's the only one who still believes that stuff, if she believes anything. But China is the real bogeyman, as I've told you. And who's going to deal with that? Well, one of the interesting things about, I don't want that chart yet, one of the interesting things about the election is that in the United States, voting is optional. And you might think that's normal, but in many countries in the world, including Australia and New Zealand, voting in elections is compulsory. And if you don't vote, they follow you up and you get fined. And why do they do that? Well, basically they do it because in Australia and New Zealand, we're so apathetic about politics. Nobody really, only the people who are in the actual business of getting paid care about politics. The rest of the country simply said, look, there's not that much difference between them. The Labour, the Democratic Party equivalent in Down Under, it will favour trade unions and the Liberal National Party coalition, equivalent of your Republicans, will favour big business. So they're all sinners. But the thing is that black vote may not come for Biden because it only comes if there's a high level of enthusiasm. And Hillary didn't get the turnout from the black vote she expected. And I'm not at all sure that the black vote's going to stick with Biden. I mean, on any view of it, you have to say that he's the most ineffectual presidential candidate that you can imagine. And I think that Obama put the fix in on the basis that he's the one guy who can get the black vote. But they've still got to turn it out. And to turn out that vote, they've got to get excited about it, which they won't. So, as I was saying, China is the real bogeyman. It's vitally important to this country, Australia, and as well as the United States. And I'm not at all convinced that Biden's the guy to stand up to China. And we know the other guy is. But as I was saying, it's a bit unfair to criticize Trump for his personal habits and personal idiosyncrasies, of which there are many. But he's not a career politician. Most of these guys spent their lives preparing to be politicians and curating their CV, if you like, make sure nothing bad was on it. Trump's been living his vast majority of his life as a private individual, a businessman, and sure, if your life was such that you had no concept of going into politics, you would say and do all sorts of things driven by what you were doing, which was being a businessman. I don't think it's fair to criticize him for what happened then, but certainly since he's been president, there's no doubt that he's taken a very strong view against China. He's promises made, promises kept. He's certainly done that. Anyway, let's move on. This is the new deal that I'm calling slow-mo. To my view, I mean, I trade daily bars, so anything longer than that, my view is always that 2 hours is short term and 2 days is long term. But we have a number of clients, including right over in California, and I'll get these comments to you in a minute. I spoke to him and a couple of other guys as well, who are money managers, and they asked me if I could find them a system where the stop losses weren't going to be getting triggered all the time. In other words, they want to trade futures like a hedge fund. They want to take a position and stay in it for as long as possible. I showed you this chart a number of months ago, and I'm just bringing it up to date, but you can see here that since this chart got long after the flash crash for COVID, it's been long all the way. And it certainly made a lot of money, $44,000 per one contract. And what I've done now is I've refined that somewhat, and this is the new slow-mo. And you can see here that it was slow getting in. I mean, the reality of futures is it cuts both ways. Leverage is sharp. It's great when you get it, and it's nasty when you get cut. Once you start changing your stops away from the optimum, you do get big drawdowns, and that's the reality of it. But you can compensate for that by having a number of systems running inside each other. You can see here, those of you who follow us know that we got long when that COVID crash, we got short, I should say, when that COVID cash was starting up in March this year. We got long literally 1 bar after the high. We got short, I should say, 1 bar after the high. And on 6S, we got long 1 day after the low. But on this sort of a program, you'll certainly give back a lot of that money. But because it's a structured program, that's not going to happen. In fact, on the structure that I'm going to suggest to you, you'd be short here. This is where we got short on 6S. And you'd be long here. This is where we got long on 6S. Maybe a day later, maybe here you'd have got long, I should say. But since then, the stops on the major program haven't been tripped. And this program's made 41,000 odd into today's. I think that was yesterday's high before I got the download. So I'm going to release that, guys. You can have a free trial of it. As you know, with everything we do, we don't try and sell it to you, but we do say you can have a free trial, make up your own mind, see if it suits you, what you want it now. It's quite extensive because once the reversal signal's been triggered, you do have to trade the daily bars for a number of days until the new trend is clear. So it's not just a set and forget, it's a set and be on top of it and be aware of it. But the Danielcode will create all of those signals. Let me catch up on some things here. Rob says, Beijing has fired missiles into the diffused waters. Yes, it has. They're escalating this tension with the United States. US currently has 38 ships in the Indo-Pacific region. That's right. Mac says, I know Mac, he's a great Danielcode guy. I say, thank God there's a New York brawler in the White House. Well, I think that's important, particularly if you're talking about real global issues that we're facing. Anyway, Joel from Vero Beach asked me, what about this Australian lockdown? What's happening? He said, it sounds like they're all a bunch of Nazis. Well, the fault is not really the Nazis so much as it is the socialists, Joel. So if you look at this map of Australia, Australia is a federation, like the US, but with an entirely different constitution. But basically, it's a group of states that banded together to form the Federation, and then the Federal Parliament of Australia. So you have the same issue again as you have in the States. You'll be very familiar with it, of states' rights. And the leaders of our states at that level of government are called premiers. And the leader of the federal government is called the Prime Minister. But the premiers all have different rules. different approaches, outlooks to this whole COVID thing, and they have the power. If you look at this map, Western Australia, where it's all yellow, that's the Pilbara, that's the iron ore, that's where all the iron ore comes from over there. And also either gold or silver comes out of Meekatharra. I had an experience with Meekatharra many, many years ago. Interesting. The Northern Territory, that's just a huge, massive area. And Queensland, as you can see, is a huge, huge, massive state. Where I live is on the coast down near the New South Wales border. However, in Western Australia, we have a Labor government, but I don't think they're not socialist. In Queensland, we have a Labor government, not socialist. In Northern Territory, the government there has just been returned. They just had an election. New South Wales and Victoria are the beating hearts of business in Australia. That's where the big industry is. That's where the big businesses are. And New South Wales has a liberal, but in Australia it has a totally different meaning, that word liberal. It's the Liberal National Party coalition. It's the government, and that's essentially the Republicans, if you like, with a big bias towards the National Party, which used to be called the Country Party. It's a political party that represents country people, and it is in coalition with the Liberal Party to form the Liberal National Party coalition. Changed their name from Country Party to Coalition Party. That's a lady there. There can be a lot of ladies involved. Bajiklian, her name is. She's taking a pretty sensible middle course, cognizant that business can't be kept shut, as Trump said so precisely. The cost of the cure can't be worse than the disease, and where you've got businesses, states shut down, that's what's going to happen. And in Queensland, which is the tourist state, that's what it's sugar cane and tourism are big industries. People can't get in from the other states now unless they spend 14 days in a supervised hotel, supervised by the police and the army together, and you've got to pay $3,000 to pay for that 2-week stay in the hotel. So effectively, the New South Wales border is, the Queensland border is closed. My daughter's down in Sydney in New South Wales. She'd love to come up here and visit us. I'd love to get down and see her, but we can't. So that border's effectively closed. Down in Victoria, you have the true socialist government of Dan Andrews. And what happened is that Australia's an island, so we got COVID under control very, very quickly as soon as the federal government closed the airports and closed the shipping ports. This infection was largely coming in with people who'd been overseas and picked it up. Once you stopped them, stopped them at the border, put them into quarantine for 14 days, this thing practically died out. Now, it's not going to die out. There's always going to be some of it circulating in the community because of the different values that patients have. Some can be actively sick, very, very sick. People can die from this COVID-19. And some are asymptomatic. In other words, they have the symptoms, but it doesn't worry them. Some of them are not even aware that they had them. So there's always going to be that low-grade infection running around. But what the federal government decided at the height of this thing all happening is that it was going to close down the airports and the seaports and put everyone into quarantine for 14 days. That's how long it takes for this virus to incubate. And they were going to put them to nice hotels, and the federal and the Australian taxpayer, that's me and some of you, we were going to pay for it. But anyway, we do things that the government suggests, and that got the spread of this thing under control very, very quickly. What happened, however, in Victoria is while all the states had agreed that the quarantine hotels would be supervised by the army or the police, Chairman Dan, the socialist who runs Victoria, decided he wasn't going to do that, having agreed to it. He was going to give the contracts to his mates in the trade union. And he did that. And I've told you this story, so I won't dwell on it, but literally they put an ad in the paper saying, come tomorrow, and you can start in a paying job supervising these folks who are in quarantine. No training, no personal protective equipment, no idea what they were doing. Literally one day, come in, we'll get you money. So some of the guards who were, because they came from, were referred or referenced, recommended by a trade union, they came from, some of them were bouncers, unskilled people for the health benefit. Other people had no training at all. But some of them got a bit too friendly with the returned quarantine people. And they got so friendly that they got infected without knowing it and took it home to their families. And then that just went mad in Victoria. We had this second wave outbreak. And that's why these states are still all cut down, Joel. And I know America, they're probably more aware of liberty and freedom than anyone because it's taught to them, it's banged into them, it's part of every function. It's part of your national anthem. It's a big, big deal. Whereas certainly when part of the world where I live, it's taken for granted. But we don't sort of talk about it much. It's just there because it's always been there. But that's been the problem, Joel. So right down Western Australia, Northern Territory, South Australia and Queensland, that's the vast bulk of this country, have closed their borders to Victoria, and in Queensland we've also closed our borders to New South Wales, and they've got roadblocks everywhere. They're turning away thousands of people, and a really funny story to tell you about that. A well-known Victorian businessman who runs a very, very large construction company decided he was going to get out of Victoria come what may, and he has a beautiful 25-metre, 75-foot yacht. It's not actually a yacht, it's a motorboat, but they call it yachts, don't they? Big one. And he put an application in the Queensland government saying this vessel was going to transfer from Melbourne right all the way up to the Gold Coast without stopping, and it's got big enough fuel tanks to do that. And the Queensland government gave them a permit to do that because the application said they were bringing the equipment to Queensland, to the Gold Coast actually, for major refitting purposes. We've got some very big shipbuilding industries here. So they granted him that. And then what happened is that he finished up on the boat with his wife and his son and the son's girlfriend and a few other people. And they were silly enough on the way up the coast to make 5 or 6 stops, including at Yamba, which is northern New South Wales. And they got off the boat. They were there for a couple of days, so they got off the boat, had a wander around, probably had a beer, who knows. But 60 Minutes were filming him for some particular reason, and they got the film of him and his family and friends walking around in New South Wales when they were barred in New South Wales because they'd come out of Victoria anyway. There was 20-odd police descended on the boat when 60 Minutes got around to telling the government, and they took him and his family off, and they've all been tested. They're all heading for 14 days quarantine, but the government's not paying for it anymore now. From now on, from the last month or so, if you have to go into quarantine, you're paying the $3,000 yourselves, folks, and that's all there is to it. Okay, I want to, and I know I'm going to run out of time, but very important, I want to talk about Frank DB and the Fourth Seal. He's a true Danielcode madman. Now, what do I mean by madman? I mean a madman is a person. I'm a madman. I'm a Danielcode madman. So's Dean, who we were talking about. So anyone who's done a Danielcode tutorial. Because if you're a madman, you're just taking yourself entirely away from commentary, the talking heads, as I call them. And you've got to understand that one of the basic jobs of media all over the world is they get in some nice new reporters and say, your job is to explain to the public why the market did what it did today. So what happens is after the market's done what it's done today, they then try and find a reason that fits that. And it's truly, it's rubbish. If you think market commentary, even by the so-called experts, is anything more than the funny farm, you're in the wrong business. But The extraordinary thing is Frank wrote this article near Christmas 2019. And in the middle of the COVID crash, he said, I may seem crazy, but I still think new highs for the S&P in 2021, which is basically what the article says. And so that makes Frank the best of the Danielcode madmen, because he's ignoring market chat and expert commentary and simply following the Danielcode fourth seal charts. And frankly, I am not aware that anyone else voiced a similar view. Nobody except the Danielcode was saying new highs in 2021 by the time that COVID crash had done a bit of damage. So I really do applaud him. He's a madman, and he's a famous madman. And women, too, can be DC madmen. Two of our greatest traders, Sister Sage and Frank DB. They treat media and private commentary as humor and enjoy the laugh. And the story of Sister Sage, she's no longer with us. She passed away last year, very young age, a crazy, ridiculous, horrible thing. Lovely, lovely lady, very, very lovely lady, very attractive, a real character, the center of any party, and a demon Danielcode trader, a real mad one. Maybe it should be mad woman. Her husband, Darryl, the Mustang man, was the second guy I ever taught the Danielcode to, she was the third. And she came to me and said, I want you to teach me this stuff. I don't read newspapers. I have no interest in financial matters. I've never seen a financial chart. And she had this famous saying. She went on to be one of our very best traders, trading Forex mainly. And she said, to me, it's easy because I don't read the papers. I don't listen to financial commentary. I have no interest in any of that. I simply do what John Needham's taught me. And if you do the Danielcode and you simply know what I teach you, you'll be like Dean, like Sister Sage, and of course, like Frank DB. Frank DB came to do a Danielcode tutorial when I was living in Taupo, 2010, 2011, not sure which. And a lovely young man, and he came to me and said he's from Belgium. He's a farmer. His family owns a farm, which he owns now, I guess. He's lost his father and mother, unfortunately. And he said he had his fiancée with him, Anne, who's a lovely young lady. And he said, I read all your articles. I used to write a lot for Financial Sense. You can read most of those articles at the Danielcode website. He said, I love your articles. I want you to teach me this trading business, but I've never seen I've never seen a financial chart. I want you to teach me. And of course, interestingly, that was the first year that I taught the fourth seal at a Danielcode tutorial. And Frank took that up. That became his thing, and he just worked on it and worked on it and worked on it. And now he's the guru of the fourth seal. And but women too can be madmen. I don't know whether we should call them mad women. Probably not. But that's where it is. So important to remember this, folks, today. The DC rules for outside bars. This is what happened because the Jay Powell, the head of the U.S. Federal Bank, was talking today. What that usually means is that the monkeys get out of the zoo and they're now running the farm. So we've had a lot of outside days today, and that's why. It's not uncommon to see that happen. When there's times of more stress, it happens more often. But the rule for the Danielcode, if you get an outside bar on the day of entry of a new signal, you must stop and reverse if you get an outside bar. Why is that? Well, have a look. So there was a buy signal. You can see that the bar on Wednesday, the low of that bar was 177 carat 12. The DC blue line was 177 carat 15. 3 ticks difference, nothing, less than a hair. And that, together with the other indicators, triggered a buy signal for us in US T-bonds. So that buy signal was elected. The market went up. Where did it go up to? 179.02. That's a 62.5% retracement. Those of you who've got the Danielcode trading tools, make sure you're aware that although it's not active, that number, because nearly all the time in that range the market will find the 59% line, but you can switch on the 62.5%. How good was that? The market went up. The red line was at 179.02. That was the 62% number. What was the high yesterday? 179.03. One tick. Then it reversed and took out the low. Now, every order has a failure point. We had that buy signal, 2 ticks above the high of Wednesday's bar. The failure point is 2 ticks below the low of Wednesday's bar. Once the market got there, you must stop and reverse. Now, I know a lot of you have trouble with that. See what happened here. The market went up $625. On the success, we had a discretionary trailing stop of about $800. So we lost $200 on the long side, but by following the Danielcode rules and reversing, when you get an outside bar on the day of entry, which yesterday was a new signal to get long, when it takes out that low after it's elected the long side, that's the very definition of an outside bar, and you must get short. I know that's very hard for a lot of you, but look, you lost 400, 800 was the trailing stop. You lost a couple of $100 on the long side. You made $1,200 on the short side. You got it all back plus another $1,000. Now, this was what appears to most people to be a panic move. This was based on when Powell was speaking. I told you where the high of that bar was, 176.04 against the DC number. 179.03 against the DC number of 179.02. Look where the close was. Right on the Danielcode blue line. That blue line number's been on your chart for weeks. And the close is 176.05. Where's the Danielcode number? 176.05. Spot on, all things perfect. So I hope you can learn to do that, and let's rush along, guys, because we've got a long way to go. And talking about Madman's logic, the whole world would say, wow, that crazy outside bar. Why is it crazy? We know that it landed exactly at the Danielcode blue line. And this is the long-term trend chart. This is the 24-day chart of T-bonds, which goes all the way back to October 1998. And you can see that we haven't moved the Danielcode trading channel since sometime March 2016. That's when we haven't updated the trading channel since then. Why not? Because it hasn't needed to be moved. The market's trading perfectly within there. Have a look at today's big outside down. Where did it stop? Right at the dotted blue line median of that whole range. Extraordinary, isn't it? Just to point out to you folks, there is a cluster of moon cycles right now in the S&P today and the next day, Friday, maybe Monday. Now, these moon cycles, a lot of these cycles will fall on a weekend, so they're only accurate to plus or minus 1 bar, because if they fall on a Saturday, the chart will put that cycle on the Friday. If they fall on the Sunday, the chart will put it on a Monday. So for that reason, they're only accurate to plus or minus 1 bar. Now, time cycles can give you anything from a mere vibration to a total change of trend, but you do at least need to be aware of them, and that's why I'm showing you this chart. Okay, so I need some more members, folks. I get few referrals. Most people who do Danielcode tutorials say, don't tell anyone, this is too good. But learning to trade safely and profitably is one of the greatest gifts you can give to anyone. You have it once you learn it, you have it for your lifetime. I will be happy to pay you $1,000 if you introduce me any clients who do a Danielcode tutorial. If you want to make that into a business, I'll pay you more and we can set up an ongoing agreement. So if you know anyone, please try and refer them to me. If they can start in September, I'm happy to give them terms of 90 days on the fee. So most of you have seen this. If you want to be a super trader, send me an email. I'll give you a call on the phone. We can discuss your trading, what you'd like to do, and how we can do that. Remember, the business of trading futures and forex is not about being right. That's an ancillary product, but the real business of trading is making money, and the more money you make, the better you're trading. And Dean, as you've seen, is a fantastic trader, and he's doing really, really well. Keep strictly to your Danielcode risk rules. Dean, stick to the program. Don't go outside it. You'll be safe and very profitable. And I do say congratulations to you, mate. If you're near 100% for the week, you're famous. and for the month, I should say. And you can do that in more months. Make sure that you're in active markets. That's all, folks. This is my disclaimer, which I do urge you to read. Trading is very risky. You can lose your money. Most people do. Because they don't know how to trade. Make sure you're really competent trade, that you understand the Danielcode trading system before you risk real money. Once you do that, of course, you're on your way. So there we are. That's all I have for you today. I'll leave you with the picture of the whale jumping jumping out of the water at Queensland's glorious Gold Coast. And thank you for being with me today. And I'll post that link to the Fourth Seal forecast up on the Danielcode website just as soon as I've posted the 4x signal, the 6x signals, I should say, which is coming next. So thank you for being with me. I look forward to seeing you again. Do shoot me an email if there's anything you'd like to discuss. Hello, Akshay. Good to see you got here. Do send me an email if there's anything you'd like me to discuss. Akshay, any update on the DX index? Well, what I can tell you is we have a daily buy signal for it today, Akshay. But if you want more information than that, send me an email and I'll prepare something for our next webinar. And the same to all of you folks. If there's a particular topic you want me to think about and talk to you about, I'll be more than happy to do it. But for now, it's bye-bye and enjoy your weekend. Thank you, Hank, and you, my friend.